I yield the
Senator from Tennessee.
Thanks, Madam President. Madam President, I want to speak this afternoon of a lesson for Washington, D.C. from Maryville, Tennessee, which is my hometown. And the lesson is a lesson most of us learned in kindergarten, and which I learned in my mother's kindergarten, which was in a converted garage in our backyard, Maryville, and it was 3 words: work well together. The latest example of that out of my hometown was all over the sports pages on Sunday. Historic championship. Maryville wins the 13th state title, most ever. Our football team has learned to work well together. They won their 2nd consecutive state championship, 13, as the newspaper said, in all. They beat Memphis Whitehaven. I watched the game on statewide television. Their record this year was 15-0. It was their 9th state title and 9th perfect season under an extraordinary coach, George Quarles, who has won 179 games and lost 13 games in his career of coaching. This is the most state titles of any school in Tennessee in its history. The team scored 35 or more points in 109 of Coach Quarles' first 191 games. It's averaged 30 or more points in 12 of his 13 seasons. And his senior quarterback this year, Patton Robinson, who's got scholarships from good schools everywhere, was named the Gatorade Tennessee Football Player of the Year, part of which has to do with his academic credentials. He's got a straight A+ average, which leads me to the second thing they work well together on in Maryville, Tennessee, and that is that the Maryville City Schools were named the best overall school district in the state based on their academic performance by the State Collaborative on Reforming Education. The Maryville City Schools recently received all A's on its state math, reading, social studies, science, and writing assessments. According to the Nashville Tennessean, they had the 2nd highest test scores in the state in reading and math. The high school was selected as one of 3 finalists in the prize category of high schools for, quote, based primarily on student achievement gains and progress over time. More than 80% of Maryville High School students were proficient in math, 88% in reading language arts. More than 90% graduated in 2010 from the high school. 4 seniors were national merit semifinalists. 48% of Maryville High School students who took the ACT college prep test last year met all 4 benchmarks for college and career readiness: English, math, reading, and science, compared to 15% statewide and 25% nationally. So the football team and the students academically have learned to work well together at Maryville High School. Now, how did this all happen? I know a little bit about this. I'm a proud graduate, as you might have suspected by now, of Maryville High School. And I've wondered about this for a long time. How could it have such success in so many things? It's not the richest town in the state by a long shot. Most families in Maryville would describe themselves as middle income. One indicator of why they succeed and why they achieve so much excellence in so many ways in their schools is that the town devotes about 70% of its budget to its schools. And it's in a county where about half the citizens, 50% of the citizens of 100,000 in Blount County, have a library card. And it's a place where, at least it was when I was there, if you get in trouble at home, you get in trouble if you get in trouble at school, you get in trouble at home. I can remember being called to the principal's office and administered a pretty stern discipline when I was in the 8th grade, and I got the same treatment at home when I got home, even though my father was chairman of the school board. So there was none of this business of parents blaming the teacher and the principal for what the child had done. But I think the school principal, who's new to the town, Greg Roach, said it best. I saw him being interviewed at halftime of the football game last Saturday night. He was asked, how did this happen? How did you have this championship football team more than any other school in the state, and you're named the best school district in the state? How can you do that all at once? He said, well, it's a town school, and when something happens, everybody shows up. Well, they showed up at Tennessee Tech for the football game last Saturday night, but they also show up at the annual academic awards banquets. I've been to those. in the last several years, it's more like a sporting contest, with this student winning the National Spanish Championship and this one doing well in Latin and getting the same kind of honors and the same kind of awards and scholarships and pats on the back that the football players do. This emphasis on excellence in education and athletics is not something new in Maryville, Tennessee. My grandfather sold his farm in the county to move into town so my father could go to school, and my aunt said that my father said that he felt like he'd died and gone to heaven when he had that opportunity. Then my father, who was an elementary school principal, after World War II, ran for the city school board with 4 other men and women, and they stayed on the board as a ticket. They were elected every year as a ticket. And they stayed there for 25 years with the whole objective of improving the quality of the education in the Maryville City school systems. While all that was going on, my mother taught school, as I mentioned earlier, in a preschool program, really the only one in our county at the time. I think Mrs. Pesterfield also had a preschool program, but Mrs. Alexander's, and I used to call it lower institution of learning, had 25 3- and 4-year-olds and 25 5-year-olds in the afternoon. And she was lobbying the whole time to the school board, on which my father served, to put her out of business and start public kindergarten, which they eventually did in our state. I used to talk about the Maryville schools and the community of Maryville when I was running for president 20 years ago, and my friend Bill Bennett, who was also a United States Education Secretary and was chairman of my campaign, would say to me, Lamar, not every community in America is Maryville, Tennessee. And I know that. But I think a lot more could be. There are a lot of theories about what makes a good school, but I think Principal Roach may have it about right. It's a town school, and when something happens, everybody shows up. And I think our new Speaker of the House in Tennessee, Beth Harwell, had it right too, when she observed that our state legislature finished its work early, had some disagreements, but worked well together, got some results, and she said they had learned in kindergarten to work well together, and that maybe that lesson would be a good lesson for Washington, D.C. Well, Speaker Harwell, I think, is right. And the example of the Maryville football team and the Maryville students, I think, is also right. When everybody shows up, when something's going on, and when people work well together, good things happen. Working well together, in our case, bipartisanship, is not a goal. Just as working well together was not the goal of the football team. They wanted the championship. It wasn't the goal of the students. They wanted the scholarship. But they knew that they had to work well together as a community to get a result. They got a championship football team. They got the best school district in the state. Perhaps that's a lesson for the United States Senate as we seek to take the very difficult responsibilities we have here and earn the respect of the men and women of this country who hired us and sent us here to solve problems. That's why today I would like to celebrate the success of the championship football team of Maryville High School and the championship school district of Maryville, Tennessee, and suggest that their lesson of working well together might be a good lesson for us. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.